South Africa is fighting to get off the FATF grey list, and a new law, the CIPC Beneficial Ownership Register, is touted as a key weapon. But beneath the surface of global compliance lies a deeply concerning detail, a race-based requirement that many fear has far more to do with property than with fighting financial crime. Most of you have probably heard of the Beneficial Ownership Register, or at least encountered its requirement. It's now compulsory for every private company in South Africa to submit it or face deregistration. This is part of a global standard hastened into law on a compliance crusade to get South Africa off the Financial Action Task Force's grey list, which is a list of countries under increased monitoring for deficiencies in combating money laundering and terrorism financing. But what makes South Africa's Beneficial Ownership Register uniquely different, and for many, deeply worrying? Yes, you guessed it. Its explicit demand for racial and disability data. The Financial Action Task Force, FATF, which sets these global standards for anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism financing, does not recommend or require the collection of race, ethnicity, or disability information for beneficial owners. Look at major economies like UK or the US with its new FinCEN register. Their requirements focus solely on identity, nationality, and control, not demographics. South Africa's inclusion of race and disability questions is a glaring outlier. Officially, the Companies and Intellectual Property Commission, or CIPC, states it ties into the country's unique constitutional mandate and legislative framework for economic transformation and the redress of historical inequalities. They argue this data helps monitor policies like broad-based Black Economic Empowerment, or B-BBEE, designed to increase participation of historically disadvantaged groups in the economy. But this justification naturally triggers suspicion. These questions seem specific to South Africa's socio-economic goals, rather than being a universal requirement for fighting financial crime. Here's the critical disconnect. If the broader beneficial ownership disclosure aims to combat financial crime by identifying hidden owners, a money launderer's race is entirely irrelevant to the criminal act itself. Even more alarming is the consequence. It is now compulsory to submit a beneficial ownership declaration before you can even file your annual return with CIPC. Non-submission of the annual return leads directly to the deregistration of your company. The declaration requires your name, ID, nationality, country of residence, and the nature and extent of your control. In addition, race must be selected from options like black, colored, Indian, white, and you must declare whether you have a disability or not. This demographic information is a mandatory field, meaning you must provide it to avoid deregistration. The threat of deregistration for not disclosing race seems overly severe and out of proportion to the stated purpose of mere statistical analysis. It raises profound questions about the true priorities and underlying motivations. A well-founded fear here is that this data is being collected to further the agenda of Expropriation Without Compensation, or EWC. The narrative around EWC has often downplayed that property extends far beyond just land to encompass all assets. In legal and economic terms, property includes anything a person or entity can legally own or over which they have a bundle of enforceable rights, from houses and factories to bank accounts, intellectual property, and shares in companies, even your pension fund. So what the CIPC's Beneficial Ownership Register allows is an unprecedented level of data collection. It creates a comprehensive database of land and all other property ownership linked to racial demographics. This data could theoretically be used to identify areas or specific properties where ownership patterns are perceived to be concentrated in certain racial groups, which might then be viewed as targets for land reform or EWC efforts aimed at achieving more equitable distribution. Consider this stark reality. According to the 2017 land audit, white individuals, who constitute about 7.3% of the population, own approximately 72% of individually owned farms and agricultural holdings. In stark contrast, Black Africans, comprising over 81% of the population, own only 4% of such land. While not a direct land audit, the CIPC data could serve a similar function by providing a detailed picture of corporate asset ownership and the racial profile of these beneficial owners. This data also offers a powerful justification for EWC policy. The existence of official data showing a high concentration of assets ownership by specific racial groups could be used by proponents of EWC to strengthen the narrative that radical economic reform is necessary for social justice. Even if not directly used for a specific expropriation, the aggregated data could provide statistical evidence to support political arguments for the necessity of EWC as a means to address historical imbalance. Furthermore, it plays directly into the public interest argument within the Expropriation Act. The Act allows for expropriation in the public interest if a significant portion of assets is identified as being owned by companies whose beneficial owners belong to a specific racial group. It could be argued that altering the ownership structure serves the public interest of broad-based land and economic reform. The CIPC's own stated reason for collecting race data is economic transformation, an objective directly aligned with the goals of EWC. Finally, there's the very real potential for future legislative amendments. Data collection often precedes policy formulation. The government might collect this detailed demographic data, analyze it, and then based on these findings, propose a new legislation or amendments to the existing laws, like the Expropriation Act, that could explicitly or implicitly utilize such information to guide future asset redistribution efforts. In essence, the worry stems from the dangerous confluence of the new, powerful Expropriation Act and this new, comprehensive CIPC data collection mechanism that identifies the racial and disability profile of beneficial owners across the entire economy. While the government maintains separate intentions for these initiatives, South Africa's history of racial classification, the highly sensitive nature of the data, and the stringent enforcement mechanisms create a potent environment for public concern and speculation about how this information might be used in the pursuit of South African transformation agenda. This isn't just about compliance, it's about the future of property rights and economic participation for all South Africans. It demands our vigilance and questions from every citizen.